Hey, prognoggins everywhere. So here we are, coming up on the halfway point of 2025. We are almost at Midsummer Day. Seems like an excellent point to pause, take a look back at the year so far, take stock of what has come out and what has happened in the world of prog. Also, take a little bit of time to take stock of what has been happening with Bleeding Edge so far this year. So, going to recount some things, going to go over some things, going to talk about my opinions, going to talk about your opinions. We're going to do all of that in just a moment. All right, hey, Prognoggins. So, this is Dave, Bleeding Edge. Thank you for joining me. Taking a look back at the year so far that is 2025. It has been, needless to say, an interesting year in many ways other than just progressive rock. But I am going to be focusing on progressive rock as we hit midsummer, the beginning of summer, which I always thought was an odd term for calling it Midsummer's Day, when in fact it is actually considered the beginning of summer. Nothing makes sense in that way. But that is neither here nor there. You can probably find the history of that somewhere else in the YouTube world. Meanwhile, let's talk about what has been going on so far this year. So we've had some pretty big releases in the world of prog so far this year. Maybe not cataclysmic, or maybe they were. It depends on what you want to think. So far, what I can say is I don't know that anything has punched me in the face and wowed me so far like I've had at the beginning of the last 2 years. So that's kind of interesting, and we'll see what to make of that as we go down the road. But the big things that have been coming out so far this year, of course, Coheed and Cambria. They released part 3 of the Vaxis storyline. The Father of Make-Believe is the title of that album. Them just continuing that career-spanning narrative that they have been doing now for 25 plus years with nary a break, with the exception of The Color Before whatever it was. The Color Before Time. I don't think that's right. Didn't mean to say that and didn't write it down, so you know how it is. But this is them continuing and finding a way somehow to still maintain the quality and the energy of it without really changing much. It's almost like they haven't aged a day. It almost seems like they recorded all of this 25 years ago in one big, 1 year long recording session, and they're just dribbling it out over the years. I couldn't tell you. It's pretty amazing in my mind, though, how they've managed to continue to maintain the quality of what they've been doing and the originality of it without really changing their style a whole heck of a lot. It's pretty impressive on their part. Meanwhile, then, of course, you had Neil Morse, who comes out with something seemingly about every other month, who's constantly putting out new material, either by himself or with his band, which I'm not sure if they technically exist anymore, or another band. In this case, yet another new project, another new band. They were called a supergroup in this particular case. It's called Cosmic Cathedral. It's got Chester Thompson, who's best known for his work with Genesis, but also many other things, particularly jazz fusion. Also Phil Keaggy, as well as Byron House. So you've got all these guys together, and suddenly he comes out with something, their debut, Deep Water, and it's kind of this still Neil Morse sounding thing, but also with a bit more jazz fusion than you are maybe used to hearing in a typical Neil Morse production. So that was interesting and definitely different. So one of the big wigs in the world of prog putting out something. Meanwhile, you got some great new music from bands that maybe are putting out some of the among the best stuff, if not the best stuff of their career, with IQ and Cosmograph and the Flower Kings, them coming back and suddenly churning out some really fine stuff. Steven Wilson also returned it to extended conceptual prog, something that I would say a lot of his fans have been hoping he would do for a while, not having been pleased with his digressions into pop and electronica. And I think the results were mixed overall, although I've seen a lot of praise for the overview. And that's also going to be accompanied by his first solo tour in about 8 years. So that's pretty cool, and I'll definitely be there for that. Definitely want to see what is happening with him live. I've heard some pretty impressive stuff about the live show production in terms of how he creates a cinematic experience with the overview, which I think that would serve that album well. So it'll be interesting to see that. Some of you have already seen it. I'd be curious about your thoughts about that. Does it live up to the hype? Meanwhile, you've got follow-up releases from bands that released stellar debuts about 2 years ago, those being Okrust and No Spoon, with Waving at the Sky and Ozai, respectively. No Spoon, of course, not necessarily putting out new music, but a complete redo of some of their old music in EP form. So I don't know if that means we can still expect something in a full-length album from them soon down the road, maybe very soon. We'll see. I don't know how much that little project took up their time, but I'm hoping that does not preclude us getting a full-length release in the very near future. Speaking of debuts, meanwhile, new artist debut Jacob Roberge with The Passing has made some big waves in the terms of response in the prog world. So that's been a very cool thing. And I got to talk with him, a cool dude, and I enjoyed that. And I look forward to seeing and hearing more from him in the future. Meanwhile, probably the most anticipated title that was coming out this year in the world of prog was Dream Theater's first release after reuniting with Mike Portnoy. That, of course, being Parasomnia. Also coming out to mixed but mostly positive reviews. It does seem to have energized the band a great deal, and they put out something that is very cohesive and very thought-provoking in many ways, and very intriguing. And among one of the best songs I've heard from them is contained on that album with Bending the Clock. But the album itself, for me, was maybe the best in 20 years that they have put out. So that's been a very cool thing. And then there's the biggest release period in terms of probably almost everything, but especially in terms of sales and attention, that being Sleep Token with Even in Arcadia. That obviously made a big splash with 8 countries debuting the album at number 1, including the US on the Billboard Hot Album charts, selling out huge stadiums all over the place, tickets getting very expensive and hard to get a hold of. So they have made a big splash with an album that is largely about the struggles of making a big splash, interestingly enough. That was an album that I reviewed. Lukewarm to positive on it. We'll see if it grows on me. It does have the traits of a grower in it, and we'll see what happens there. So those are the big albums that have come out so far this year, the most notable ones in my mind. On the other hand, there's what's been going on with this channel, Bleeding Edge, in and of itself. Busy doing new things this year. In short, for those maybe that haven't already heard or didn't already know, had to curtail, at least I thought I would be, curtailing my activities doing interviews for the simple fact that I had a change in my primary job schedule, which made it exceedingly difficult to schedule anything with anybody in the other hemisphere just because of the time shift. So didn't expect to do a whole heck of a lot of that. Surprise, surprise, I found that there was actually a number of Europeans willing to do weekends to be able to do this stuff with me. So I got a few more in than I expected, and a few more on the American side, the Canadian and American side, than I expected. So where I thought I would probably only be seldom doing interviews, I've actually kept up at a fairly decent pace. In addition to shifting the channel direction a little bit more towards album reviews and trying to keep up with a schedule that included weekly album reviews. Been more challenging than I expected it to be, mostly just because I like to find time to really listen and dive into the album before I review it. And that means I need probably at least a 4 to 5 day shift from when I get it to when I do a review. Takes up some time. It's been interesting. I can fit some short ones in here and there where I listen to something that sparks my interest, but don't have the time to give a full review to it, but want to talk about it. Therefore, I instituted Prog Shots and started putting out more shorts and reels. So that's kept me busy as well. Introduced the new feature Archive Deep Dive, something I will do periodically when I get the chance and the mood is upon me. Pulling out an album that is much lesser known, something that people maybe don't remember very well or hardly remember, or maybe virtually unknown, just to see, hey, what we think about it and share it with everybody here. It's pulling stuff out of my own collection primarily, and stuff I think that is interesting just in a historical perspective, but also overlooked, and I think deserves the attention, maybe more people listening to it if possible. So that's something I plan to continue. And of course, there's all the other little extra things. I throw in a list here and there, throw in a reaction video here and there. Haven't had much time for those, so I've only done one so far this year. So there you go. Now, as we're talking about reviews, that does bring to mind a few things. For those that are curious and haven't been keeping track, not that I expect anybody's keeping track other than me, and you don't have to because I'll do it for you. If we're looking at the final scores right now, what we are looking at for the top 10 so far albums reviewed by me this year in the world of prog. Starting with number 10, we have Oak, The Third Sleep, with a final score of 3.75. Okrust, Waving to the Sky, which is also at a 3.75. IQ, Dominion. Jason Bieler, The Escapologist. Hats Off Gentlemen, It's Adequate, with The Uncertainty Principle. Those others all were at 3.75. Hogia, for short, comes in with a 4 for the final rating. Dream Theater, Parasomnia, also scoring a 4. Coheed and Cambria, The Father of Make-Believe. Cosmograph, The Orphan Epoch. And Flower Kings, Love, comes in at number 4. Only one exceeding 4, not a number 4, but a score of 4. Those come in where they are. At number 1 right now, sitting at number 1, and I noted at the time I did the review, was Jacob Roberge with The Passing, with a nice 4.25 final score. Now, if you're curious how that changes things, if we just look at the raw scores are before I add my enjoyment modifier, the things change up a little bit. Some notable exceptions. Now, as far as the top 10, we're still looking at Jacob Roberge, Coheed and Cambria, The Flower Kings, Cosmograph, Jason Bieler, Dream Theater, IQ, Hats Off Gentlemen, It's Adequate, Okrust, but also, and that means this list will have more than 10 because there are some ties that I will have to work out later in the year, depending on where it's at. We're going to have to figure out how to do that. But meanwhile, there are some people that suddenly sneak into the potential top 10 albums of the year. That includes Steven Wilson, The Overview, with a raw score of 4. And then Cosmic Cathedral, Deep Water, and Sleep Token, there it is, Even in Arcadia, both coming in at a raw score of 3.75. So those are the 3 that suddenly jump up, potentially finishing in the top 10. And I think this year, again, as I did last year, I may keep my year-end final list at 10. I might go up to 15. I don't think I will go to 20 again this year just because it gets a bit time-consuming to do all of that. But we'll see what happens. We will see what my mood is come December. Also, don't forget, there are some unrated dark horses in here, albums that I didn't do the full deep dive review of as of yet, and therefore I have not scored, but could consider them working their way into the top 15, top 10. And that would include ORK, or Orc, Firehose of Falsehoods, No Spoon, Ozai, deciding whether or not an EP can fit in with the Album of the Year list, hard to say, and Pattern Seeking Animals, Friend of All Creatures. So those are 3 right there that I can consider maybe jumping into that top 10 or even top 15. And I think there are probably others. I have not reviewed everything that has come out this year, and there are some things I want to probably give a closer look to as time rolls along, and we'll see what I can do about that. I have at least 10 other albums that I could catch up on that have been released so far this year that I've not yet given an attention to. So we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, I'm curious from all of you. While I'm doing reviews, to a degree, you're reviewing my reviews in your heads at the very least, if not elsewhere. I'm curious what your thoughts are. What's the feedback on the reviews so far? What do you think of my scoring and rating system? Do you like me breaking it down into those 4 categories and scoring it onto 1 to 5, or do you find that just a bit overkill? What do you think of prog shots? Do you enjoy those? Do you enjoy me basically just blowing in with a 3-minute or less review of an album I've listened to once and just telling you whether I recommend it or not? Curious. I'd like to know how those are doing. They do seem to get a decent amount of views, but I don't know if people really feel that they're useful or beneficial. Things I've noticed on my own, as far as my own feedback, is it's hard not to notice that my final scores are very consistently falling into the 3.5 to 4 point range on that final score and on the raw scores as well. So have I limited myself too much in how I rate them, in the numbers I use, and the way I use the numbers? Maybe I could go to using fractions for the individual category scores. I've avoided doing that because I thought that might be overcomplicating things, but I also might have oversimplified things, and it will make itself more difficult as the year goes by. Should I maybe, rather than using 3 as the base and going, hey, as long as you did well, it's a 3 or above. If you didn't do well and you bothered me, it's a 2 or below. I don't see myself going online and trashing somebody's work in their album. So there's a very good chance that if I don't review something, it's possible it's because I didn't like it well enough and just didn't want to say that. I'm nice that way. I really don't necessarily know that I want to go on and trash anything. But at the same time, it means I have basically eliminated the scores of 1 and 2 for much of anything I'm doing. So that means that's why I'm limiting my scores in such a narrow range. So should I recalibrate? And the base of, hey, as long as you didn't screw up or bother me in some way, you got a 1 and above, and that expands the range in which I can define a positive reaction a little bit? Or is that overcomplicating it? Don't know, but I'm curious what the rest of you think. I'd like to hear your feedback and what you think would be helpful, and see where it goes. Meanwhile, also, do my reviews run too long for most of you? I try to keep them at about 20 minutes max. Sometimes I run a little over, sometimes I'm a little short. As it turns out, on occasion, when we have an album that gives me a lot to digest, I run a bit long. And at least there's a couple 30-minute reviews I've done out there. Is that bothersome? Would you like me to cut that back a little bit and talk a little bit less and get to the point a little more quickly? Wouldn't be the first time I heard that kind of feedback somewhere. So like I said, meanwhile, coming up, more archive deep dives, including one by a very, very prominent member of a very, very prominent prog band, but it may not obviously be his album. Some more interviews are coming up. Believe it or not, I've actually got 2 or 3 slated down the road that I'm going to have to see about getting done, and 1 or 2 that I had to reschedule here and there, which always makes it fun. Communication is so key when trying to get that stuff set up. So we'll see what happens with it. And I want to increase my coverage of progressive rock events, at least on this side of the world. There's plenty of prog events that are going on in festivals in Europe and the UK and things like that. But what about the ones on the US side? Right up the road from me, in the northern part of New Jersey, there's Progstock. I actually hope to attend this year. I've not gotten there before, but this year I might actually make a point of being there. I'd like to provide some coverage and some interviews related to that. There's another one coming up in Canada called Progstorm. Going to be doing interviews with the people that are putting that on as well. That is coming up very soon. We're going to talk about that. And once again, maybe I want to expand my coverage about Bubba Bash as we come around that time of year towards the end of the year and get talking to the guys from Why Not, and if possible, some of the other performers, because I'd really like to pump that up. I think it's a great event, and it's a very, very worthy cause. So I'd like to do my best to promote that as best I can. So those are my thoughts. That's everything that's going on here. I'm curious. I want your comments. I want your feedback. Be respectful, please. Be constructive. Just don't rip me. But give me your suggestions. Give me your thoughts on what I'm doing with the channel. And I'd very much like to know what you think of my work here. Meanwhile, that's all I have for you at the moment for the Midsummer Roundup. I leave you with the usual reminder to never fear to deviate from the norm. And as always, keep it proggy.